So Amy, as a partner at Tributary Real Estate in Denver, Amy brings over 15 years of experience in commercial real estate as a licensed broker to the Tributary team. Her main focus is advising scaling companies on office space strategies to accommodate their immediate needs while also planning for growth. Amy has extensive experience in closing complex and challenging transactions, which allows her to develop creative solutions to meet every client's individual needs. Amy, thanks for taking the time for us today.
Great to see you, Patty. Happy to be here. Hello, all of the CSU Rams.
Awesome. So we'll go ahead and get started. I know our time here today is short, so students, please pop your questions in the chat as you see fit. But Amy, we'll go ahead and get started. Can you start off by sharing your journey from the CSU College of Business to where you are now?
Sure. So it's interesting. I was thinking about this. My journey actually in the commercial real estate realm started before I ended up at CSU. So a little bit of a stepping stone, and then I'll get into my post-grad. But in high school, I was a huge business nerd. Was in DECA, for those who are familiar. It's a business organization. Was our chapter president of my high school chapter and competed at a national level. So really found a love for business at a young age, which I know sounds totally nerdy, but it's true. Summer going into college and joining the College of Business there, my mom, who'd been a nurse for a number of years, decided she wanted to get her real estate license and came to me and said, I'm nervous going back to school. It's a lot to take in. If you come with me to get your real estate license, at least you can buy and sell your own house. Are you open to doing that? And I said, sure. What I found is I didn't want to be a residential broker, but there was an opportunity to marry up my business passion with real estate, and lo and behold, commercial real estate it came into my vision. And as I was entering the College of Business my freshman year, I realized there were a commercial real estate specific track and a real estate finance track. So that's where I focused in once I settled in at CSU. So I think that's important as we move to my post College of Business experiences. Was very involved in the College of Business with Real Estate Club, was vice president and was very involved in that organization. I interned with a small developer and brokerage firm, Chrisland Real Estate. Back then, there were no buildings at 2534. They were negotiating all the land leases. So if it tells you how long ago that was, it was quite a long time ago. But so that was some exposure there. And then as graduation approached, I knew I needed to find a job, and that was an exciting part going through that process. I applied at all the big shops, which you applied online at the time. I ideally wanted to stay in Fort Collins, to be honest, but lo and behold, we were headed into a recession and did not quite know that yet. So the opportunities were a little slim, but I was fortunate enough to get an interview with one of the big shops, JLL, back then Jones Lang LaSalle. And I started in a position 2 weeks after I graduated. So I interviewed with one other firm seriously, and the owner of the company was DPC Companies, Chris King, who's also a RAM. He's a graduate. Actually came in and guest spoke at during some of my classes in college. But I ultimately selected the big shop and settled into a role there. I feel like this is a lot, but it's crazy to think back on the journey.
It's great.
I started on the public side, so actually the federal government was my client. I've always been on the brokerage, tenant representation, and buyer representation. So if you think about a negotiation table, I've always been on one side of it. And then who my clients are have changed over time. So initially it was federal government, which in college I did not learn that was even an option in the commercial real estate space. So that was very fascinating, negotiating office leases across the country for the various federal organizations, everything from FBI to Social Security Administration to IRS. So very interesting perspective and where to start my career. And then I started to pivot into what I would call private sector accounts. So coming from the public sector account side to the private sector account side. I started here in Denver. I did spend about a year in Chicago at the JLL corporate office there to try to get some additional exposure to some leadership, and then settle on the private side. Fast forward where I'm at now, because I work with smaller businesses now on a local level. I finally decided I didn't want to travel anymore. I wanted to work in my own backyard, know one market. And and many clients versus one client and many markets, and ultimately made the jump to local tenant rep brokerage here in Denver back when I was at JLL. And then 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to leave with my current business partner to come over to Tributary and build a brokerage team. So for me, it was the opportunity to build something and take the knowledge and the experience I had at a big shop and kind of do it our own way.
Quite the path. I want to unpack so much of that. What a career you've had so far, and still growing. Let's rewind a little bit. You mentioned how you narrowed your focus, like you grew up in high school, you were in DECA, which DECA is actually a college chapter here within the College of Business. We have an active chapter. One of our Career Management Center counselors leads that. So students, if you're interested in DECA, there is a college one, but real estate as well. I do see some real estate students, real estate club members on the line here. Amy, if you had to say, what would a student deciding their major here within the College of Business? We have some first year Business 100 students, it's their first year. How would they know if they're a good fit for this field? You mentioned you decided you didn't like residential pretty early on. How did you decide that, and what made you go this direction?
Sure, that's a great question. I've always been somebody who has, I've just been curious by nature. And for me, I've wanted to educate myself as much as possible. So I was making the best decisions I could, not that I always have. And I think everything happens for a reason, but I spoke to a residential broker. I actually shadowed one as well. I think that was actually my freshman year. And now that you mention it, I totally had forgotten about that. So I exposed myself to both commercial and the residential. What I found is I'm very much a finance person in a mindset. And so residential to me felt a little more emotionally based decision-making versus kind of numbers oriented, which is why I chose the commercial route. So I would say if you're not sure kind of what you want to study or where you're interested in, just start talking to industry professionals. Those who are hearing my story, this is a perfect example, but I know sometimes it can be intimidating to reach out to people and ask for their advice, but we're actually pretty willing and want to help you. So I would say be proactive in reaching out to those in the various spaces you're interested in.
Absolutely. Yes, students, take advantage of the wonderful alumni network. Most people are more than willing to help. And we also have a new mentoring program. So if you're interested in that, we can talk more about that later. But Amy, if you could go back in time and relive some of those college years, what is one thing that you would do the same and one thing that you would do differently? Is there anything that you recall maybe as like a signature experience during your time here at school? Tell us about that.
I mean, I've always been kind of a hyper involved person. I still tend to be that way. I don't regret that. I think I got to meet my network is so vast because of the various organizations or clubs or meetings that I participated in, just based on, I would say, curiosity again. So I wouldn't change that. If I could do it over, I would definitely do study abroad, because I think those perspectives actually bring a lot to the table. And it's purely just understanding how another culture works, how they do business, because it's very different country to country. And I think just submerging yourself in a culture and an environment that's unfamiliar, it helps you grow as a person. I think the other thing I would add is one thing I've been very cognizant of is stepping outside the box in my comfort zone. And if you're not a little uncomfortable, you're not growing. So I think that's very important. We all have our moments, and I think you continue to challenge yourself, and stepping out of your comfort zone, something I still try to do today.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Yes, study abroad students. Natalie Cartwright is our business abroad advisor here in the College of Business specifically. So if you're interested in that, Natalie Cartwright is the one to talk to. But Amy, we're speaking of some challenges and growing. What are some of those challenges that you do encounter in your profession? How do you overcome them? How do you grow from them?
So for those who are less familiar with what I do specifically in the commercial real estate realm, it is very male dominated, which is not a bad thing. I think there needs to be male and female perspectives, and both bring value, and just diverse backgrounds in general. We all need to be at the table. So I think one of the challenges is the industry I'm in is very slow to evolve. So maybe one of the slowest. So, I probably had some challenges early on. I didn't realize that it's just, I'm underestimated and just expected to, I've, I've been underestimated. So, which is a great place to be because you can always surprise people. And I'd much rather have expectations here than here because it's a lot easier to exceed them, is what I will say. So I think that's one, is kind of stepping into a male dominated industry, to be completely honest. It's evolving and it's evolving slowly, but as a female partner, that's part of the contribution to hopefully making an impact and challenging the industry a little bit. The other piece of that, and will you repeat the question again?
Yeah, some of the challenges that you experience.
So I think one of the biggest challenges right now is the market, what's happening in the economy. And this is something that has happened 3 times now in my career of 15 years. So, this is something that's completely out of my control, and all we can do is adapt and grow and innovate. I am a firm believer, if there's one thing I've learned during these times, and what I'm speaking to is the bank failures, interest rates increasing, the fear of recession, all the things we're hearing in the news that directly impact my clients, us as a business owner, and our industry is what I will say. So, it's out of our control, but, through what I've learned through the previous recessions and challenging times is it's a time for opportunity and growth. And it's really a choice on how you view that time. That, a lot will say it's doom and gloom, it's out of my hands and I'm just not going to do anything. And I think the reality is there's a lot that we can be doing, and thinking about how we innovate and think creatively and address challenges during these times are the best approach from my experience.
Absolutely. It's wild what the headlines are saying. And Amy, how do you keep yourself informed and on these recent trends and the latest changes in the industry? What are some things that maybe students can also be tracking? Do you have any advice for that, of how to follow what's happening in the industry and then apply this knowledge elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about challenges. We live in a time of technology where we have so much at our fingertips, and it's always changing, it's evolving, and it's a global marketplace. So there's a lot out there. So there's multiple avenues. So I look at it both on a local basis and a macro basis, and even globally. So I have certain news articles and subscriptions that come to my email box every morning. So I will check those sometimes before I even come into the office. Podcasts, Wall Street Journal has some, daily news highlights and things like that. So a podcast, just getting the news highlights of the day, the local news while I'm getting ready. I'm realizing how much I actually read this, read things, and I'm on, how much I'm absorbing. But, it evolves even in a day. I think the other one is talking to people, asking what they're seeing firsthand before it's reported. And a lot of what I do for a living is not seen in the news until months later, the impact that it has. So I think having firsthand conversations with experts and asking questions is another part of it.
Absolutely. Amy, we have some more questions, but it looks like one is in the chat here from Hillary. Amy, can you discuss the role of soft skills you look for in interns and hiring new employees?
Sure.
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, in this hybrid world we're living in, right? I work in a very tangible industry. Real estate is tangible. You live in it, you walk through it, you can touch it, you see it, and it impacts all of our lives. So, for me, it's the in-person skills, communication skills, which is spoken and through the nonverbal skill sets. Being willing to learn is a big piece of that in my mind, and being willing to make mistakes. Just connecting with other people. And Hillary, I think you and I talked about this, and I'm like blanking on my email response, but this is a great question that I'm kind of stumbling over. It's communication, it's the ability to learn, it's wanting to be in person and engage with those around you. I mean, our clients are the CEO, COO, CFO, so the C-suite. So being able to have a conversation with that level of leader is super important.
Absolutely. And I think even more so than ever with all the technology developing, ChatGPT and everything is just coming out. Um, Things can be done more efficiently, but nothing is going to replace this human connection and the physically talking to one another, and being in the same space.
Yep, exactly.
Speaking of space, and you had mentioned, some of the doom and gloom, that the news can be putting out there. What excites you about your industry? With these challenges, new opportunities are there. Is there what is something that excites you?
So I think, there will be a place for office space. I will say that. But I think it's forever changed as we've seen. And I think, as we talk about transition back to the office, and I'm saying this over like the next year or two, and we're already starting to see these trends. My excitement is around the new office space. It's not the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, kind of butts and seats sort of situation or scenario. Employers are wanting more for their employees and want to provide flexibility and want them to have an environment they want to come to. And so for me, I'm excited for this evolution and innovation in office space that we're going to see going into this next phase of whatever office space is. And that's still playing out. There's nothing that's a specific trend per se at this point, but I would say it's trending towards more kind of hospitality like type space. So when you talk about like concierges at a hotel or those types of amenity spaces, I think that's what excites me, is this kind of forward thinking. Again, we're a slow industry to evolve and we're being forced to do that. So it'll be fun to see, 5 years from now where office space is.
Absolutely, that excites me as well. Even just talking with employers and how are students wanting to engage with their first employer? What does that kind of space look like? That's exciting to hear from your perspective there. Looks like we have another one in the chat here, Amy. It says, if you were to start over in your career, is there anything you would have done differently?
I think I was so eager to dive into my career after graduation, and it was so important for me to like have that employment agreement in hand and accept the offer, that I took no time off between graduating and starting my job. And it took me 10 years before I took 2 weeks off, and I went to Italy. A whole decade went by before I actually took a solid 2 weeks off. So I guess my advice would be, take some time, absorb what you've learned, recharge, and, I'm not saying necessarily take a whole year, but just take some time to reflect and maybe negotiate that in your employment agreement to take a little extra time to reflect before diving into something. Because I didn't know what I didn't know, hindsight. So I wouldn't say I necessarily regret anything, but now looking back, I wish I would have taken a little more time.
Yeah, it's important. All right. So yes, students, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, pop them in the chat here. But it looks like maybe Abby has one here.
Yes, I do have a question. Amy, thanks for talking to us today. I was wondering, it seems like you've moved up quite a bit into like leadership positions in real estate. What's some advice that you would give to students who are really wanting not only to be in the real estate industry, but to be a leader within that industry?
That's a great question. I think for me, I never set out to be a leader per se. I just wanted for me, a purpose in life is to provide impact. And through that purpose, it's kind of led me to these leadership positions. So what I would say is be innovative in your thinking. I think sometimes, folks who are just starting into their career get nervous challenging leadership or questioning things from somebody who's in a higher role or position. And I would say challenge them, obviously in a respectful, confident way. But if you think there's a better way to be doing something, that's valuable to them as a leader too. So I think, connecting and learning from other leaders, those that you respect, and, finding a mentor or, attributes in individuals that you resonate with you and you respect in them as a leader. I think that's a big part of it. And then I would say asking for the opportunities. I, on more than one occasion, was not promoted or presented with the option to be promoted without asking for it. So don't be afraid to ask for it. I think oftentimes, and it's even been proven that especially females have a harder time asking for things, but the worst case scenario is they say no. So ask for it, know your worth. And I would say also look for opportunities to mentor no matter what role or stage in your career you're in, because someone's always looking to you, even now probably, as a leader. So that's what I would say there. And I think having that purpose, that's something that's super important to me and might sound cliche or cheesy, but waking up every day knowing that I have a bigger purpose than just negotiating leases, right? There's an impact to not only the local economy, but my clients and their business and their growth, which then cycles into their personal life, right? So remembering that there's more than just the job or the position. And I think naturally opportunities will come to you to lead and to grow in those areas.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great advice there. Amy, you had just touched on, innovative thinking there in the beginning of that. In your experience, what other qualities or things that the most successful individuals within commercial real estate or just real estate in general, what do they possess, and how can students maybe develop these traits to prepare for their future careers?
I think being persistent, resilient, and I think really kind of having that bigger vision of why you're waking up every day to do what you do. I think those are huge attributes. I think being confident, but humble, authentic, and genuine, and having a willingness to learn and make mistakes and learn from your mistakes.
Great advice. Thank you.
And let me add this too. If there's one piece of advice I got kind of early on in my career that I absolutely hate now, it was fake it till you make it. And I absolutely disagree wholeheartedly with that. I would say show up, be authentic, be genuine, be willing to learn and make mistakes, like I just said, and grow. Because if you're going to fake it till you make it, you're not learning, you're not growing, you're just faking it. I don't know. I don't think it benefits anybody. So something worth noting.
Love it. It's a unique perspective. Thank you for sharing. It looks like we have one in the chat here, Amy, from Morgan. Amy, can you talk more about the technology used in the real estate industry and how that may change in the coming years?
It's a great question, and something I challenge our team is, are there tools and resources that we're not using? How do we think forward, and what opportunities there might be to use that our competitors aren't, or kind of things that are shifting in that realm? I will say I don't know. At the same time, I can speculate that Chat GPT is going to change things. That's been a topic of conversation. We use I don't even know what to call it. A tool is what I will say from a sales side of our industry that is going to be tying into Chat GPT. So that's going to be interesting to see how that kind of changes things. And that'll happen here soon. So that'll play out. We use a database called CoStar, which those of you in the commercial real estate probably are familiar with. That is something I think will evolve at some point. It's pretty much the only database that us as brokers have access to, and it's really the main MLS that we identify opportunities through. So I think we're going to see some evolution there. Unlike the residential side, where all purchases and sales are publicly documented, what we do from a leasing side is not public knowledge. So it's not, like there's an app out there to do what we do, or we're going to become kind of obsolete. We haven't seen that anyway. That's something I've had my pulse on, and my business partner and I have too. And where is this technology going? At some point, will we not be needed, I guess, is how to say it. We haven't seen that yet.
Great question, Morgan. Thank you for that. I love it. Keep them coming, students, if you have them. And Amy, while they're thinking of some more, what does your day-to-day look like? Can you talk a little bit more of that? You're in downtown Denver. You're coming into the office that looks like a picture-perfect Zoom background behind you. Your office looks great. What's your day-to-day look like?
It is different every day, and I think that's one thing I love about my job. So it's a little tricky to coordinate things, but every day is a new day. So let's take today, for example. Tuesday mornings, we have team meetings in the morning, and it's our one time during the week that our team gets together to address whatever it is that we need to talk about, anything from market intel to where we're at from a tracking standpoint with our goals for the year as a team. anything operations wise we need to touch base on. We have a woman whose 5-year anniversaries this week. So, mentioning that we have a team lunch tomorrow, things like that. Then I have a lunch meeting with a construction company today with a gentleman I met at a networking event a couple weeks ago. So just to connect with him. I have a happy hour this afternoon. And in between, I'm reading leases, identifying properties for clients, figuring out building finishes and selections for their office space and design layout. There's a lot of coordination of emails, reading news. So my mind is always going. I met the person who's up at like 4 a.m. thinking about the email I didn't have a chance to respond to. But, really my job, it's never ending because we're constantly trying to build the pipeline or the sales, building relationships with potential clients and continuing to build our relationships with current clients, as well as facilitating the deals. So unlike a lot of businesses or industries, we see the cycle from beginning to end, and that is a long sales cycle. So I negotiate deals that can take 1 to 2 years. The commercial sales cycle is a lot longer. So a lot of these, new business meetings that I'm having today may not come to fruition for 2 to 3 years. It just depends on a lot of things. So for me, it's connecting with people, it's supporting my team and what they need and helping them grow. So we have some new brokers and I'm helping them learn and go through and kind of teaching them things, as well as developing new relationships, executing on deals. There's never a dull day.
Colin, well, thank you for fitting us in and having time to talk with us today. We so appreciate it. But it sounds like you're constantly going. What does that, maybe work-life balance look like? My sister owns a residential real estate company. You're on the commercial side. It seems like there is some crossover. Her deals are a lot quicker than some of these long-term lease ones that you're running. But what does that work-life balance look like for you?
I like to call it work-life integration is what I would say, because for me, what I found is so much of what I do in my career overlaps with my personal life. And so clients become friends become clients. And I think it's important to, not that, I definitely need time to shut down. And we recently went to a 4-day work week. So we're not in the office on Fridays. However, if a client needs to meet or we have something to do, expectation you're going to do it. But I would say for me, it's that integration and accepting that, my career is so involved in the community from a, nonprofit standpoint and for-profit. And I don't know, I think I finally had to accept there's never like this hard line. I definitely have I like the separation of home and office. That's one thing I did learn because COVID, I was hyper productive and could not shut it down. So I did learn that. So from a balance standpoint, I think knowing there's that time to shut it down and that actually helps you digest the day and be prepared for tomorrow. But yeah, definitely taking the time and understanding that I get up and I have time for myself in the morning. I take my puppy for a walk. Making time to work out. So incorporating the things you need as an individual into your work life and understanding that as an employer, I can tell you, we actually appreciate those who understand that work-life integration and want and support our employees in that.
I love it. It's very unique to the real estate industry, go, go, go. And which is very different than some of the other ones where you have a come in at 9 and I leave at 5. That's not necessarily the real estate industry. Not
at all. Yep. It's great. And the nice thing about real estate is we don't work on weekends unless we choose to. Yeah. It's different in residential, but that's one thing I liked about the commercial side too, is it is a Monday through Friday gig. People aren't touring on Saturdays or Sunday.
Sure. Amy, we are coming to our time here, but I had one more come through in the chat and it says, do you have any specific advice to another woman wanting to enter a male-dominated industry?
I think it goes back to that purpose. Like there's a reason why you're taking the direction and the career direction you are. And I think remembering that in yourself and, ignore the gender and all of that. And, know what the value is that you bring to the table and have intelligent conversations and be innovative in those conversations. And I think you'll find that it really becomes a non-factor. That's what I found in my career is really there is no gender behind it. Once you just have conversations, it just kind of becomes a non-factor. Awesome. Knowing your value and your worth and having a seat at the table is great. Yes.
Good stuff. Well, students, I know these are meant to be quick. They always fly by here. If we have time for one more, Amy, it looks like there's one more that was just put in the chat. It says, it seems like the majority of the listings that you currently have are subleases. Would you attribute this to the shift in remote work in the past few years? And what is the vacancy rate trends that you have observed in the Denver market? Seems that there are several new commercial sites that are being built along the I-25 corridor from NOCO to Denver, and I am curious what the expected growth in businesses that will be expected to fill these buildings. From Matt.
Great question, Matt. So what I will tell you is we don't typically have listings unless it's a tenant who is trying to offload space or sublease space. So that's why you really only see subleases. If we have a listing, it's a client who occupies the building almost solely on their own. So we're not on the landlord side, I guess is where I'm going with that. But yes, we have had a ton of subleases as a result of remote work, to answer your question. More recently, we've seen a lot more activity on those spaces and have been able to sublease them successfully, which is great. And I think a sign of the market. I would say Denver in general is performing better than most markets across the country. So it's something very positive, despite some of the challenges that we're having downtown specifically, which is kind of a tale of two cities. We have record high vacancy in kind of the central business district, or where all the kind of 1980s high rises are, closer to Union Station or lower downtown Lodo. We have less vacancy. So we'll go, CBD has about 30% vacancy. Lodo has 12. Colorado or Denver Metro, which would include the tech center west, some of those markets is at 15%. So from a health of a I would say market, Denver's performing pretty well. I'd say pre-COVID, we were probably 10% vacancy. So it's not terrible. I mean, I do think the perception is that we have a lot more vacancy, and a big part of that is attributed to physical occupancy rates versus vacancy, meaning companies are still paying rent and have leases on space, but may not physically be coming into the office on Monday through Friday like they were before. I will say one more thing, that there is still investment and there's new product, office high rises coming to market. And this is specific to downtown, but it's also in the suburban markets as well. So the fact that there continues to be development, I think, shows signs of investors seeing a future of office space in Denver. Although challenging right now, it's all cyclical for you real estate students, as you know, and we've been in the bottom and we're just inching towards recovery, and it's going to take some time.
Absolutely. That is great insight there. Thanks for your question there, Matt. All right, students. Amy, any extra final words of advice for these real estate students that are ready to embark on their professional careers, or maybe a Business 100 student that's just maybe deciding to study real estate? Any final words?
I would just say the fact that you're here speaks volumes. Keep pursuing opportunities like this and engaging with other professionals and learning. Don't stop learning. I still am learning. I don't have it all figured out. So that would be my best advice. Keep learning, be willing to make mistakes and learn from them, and challenge the status quo, and just, I would say, bring your unique perspective and life experience to the table.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amy. I think that's great advice that can be applicable to any industry. And students, I hope you took some great advice here. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I can pop my email in the chat, but stop by the Career Management Center. We're College of Business Rockwell West 210 students. And Amy, just thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope you enjoy your lunch and all that the rest of your week has to offer.
Thanks so much. Great to be here with you all. Go Rams.
Go Rams.
Bye.